in the best run companies, there's a bit of a back and forth. Now, there's a risk when you start standing up a CDO office. It's like, oh, well, here's the chief data officer. We'll just load up the dump truck and, back it up onto her lawn and like, oh, here's all the data. Can you like clean it up and let us know when you're done? So I think that, the federation from an operating model standpoint is a really, really important concept. And I would certainly consider it a best practice in data strategy and data management. And then I like your observation about the line of business data officers too. And in my work talking to CDOs, I think that's also an emerging best practice that, now that you've got sort of the executive leadership in place and kind of a brief and a mission and a vision, well, actually getting full traction on it, you're going to need people who are a bit more embedded and, kind of really can take on board the characteristics of data in those different lines of business.
I think the one thing I'd love to add for the audience is the one thing to be careful of with this federated model is, putting these data officers and data stewards in the lines as well as your functional areas. That really makes a ton of sense because you want those people as close to the business as possible, as close to the production of data, all of that. I think when you're thinking about more enterprise-wide data products, that's where you need to build more of a COE model because data products are going to be shared across multiple lines of business and multiple functional areas. So when you're thinking about data platforms and tooling and all of that, that's where you want to keep it more central.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. So I think that's an important distinction between, call it your technology operating model and your organizational operating model. And, yes. and to a point we alluded to a little earlier, actually, when you get, different lines of business and you have them stood up on an enterprise asset, you're going to get cross-pollination and learnings. It's great for talent development, which is another key gap that, in developing the strategy as well. So I think that observation is spot on. So just back to when you started, one of the things I've been sort of pondering over the last couple of years is, should strat planning and architecture planning be more agile? 10 years ago, I worked at a Fortune 50 company. We had an annual strat planning process there were literally hundreds of people involved, waterfall, cascade, eventually it all rolls up to the CEO. In the technology space, it sort of struck me that approach may not really be fast enough and really may not be, pun intended, appropriate technology for strat planning as it relates to data and data architecture. So what are your thoughts on that? And do you share that observation and how did you approach it in terms of having that like foundational strategy, but then also like wanting to get things done and show some results quickly?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely lean more towards Agile. However, it's really important that the data teams understand what are the big themes for the company, corporate strategy wise, that we need to plan for. So I think knowing those big themes is important. And I understand that's a yearly process. That's a yearly process here. However, when it comes to the data program, that's what we call it, it's the data program, it's more of an agile planning process. We have products and we plan to those products within our planning increments, right? And then we're iteratively delivering on those increments. And then, we're bringing in more features and we're continuously delivering. I think you have to move fast in this environment. You can't wait on a yearly cycle to think about what are your big strategies for the next 2 to 3 years. I think from a corporate standpoint, it makes sense, but when you're actually on the ground getting things done, it's got to be more agile.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good distinction because, normally, certainly in publicly traded companies, right? Like you're going to have an annual report, you're going to have a review of that, you're going to have, kind of different planning horizons. And if it's a well-run company, those aren't going to change dramatically from year to year. It's really sort of the translation of that into an operational plan where if you go too slow, then you just get left behind.